Hi, I'm Jenny Taylor Martin, a director here at Edgar Cayce's A.R.E. And today I'm speaking with Cayce expert and author John Van Auken about his book, Angels, Fairies, Demons, and the Elementals. Hi, John. It's nice to have you with us today.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
So I think almost everybody knows what angels, fairies, and demons are, but what do you mean by the elementals?
Well, most researchers and authors consider the elementals to be part of the fairy kingdom, but Edgar Cayce and other researchers do not. They see the elementals as the elemental structures of matter and also in states of matter. So they're not beings, they're more the elements of which matter is composed. And the classical metaphysical view is earth, water, fire, air. And then the fifth would be ether, which is invisible, but nevertheless there. States of matter are solid, liquid, and vapor or gas, and again, ether. But in science, they actually see solid, liquid, gas, and then what they're calling electrified, ionized electrons, which is plasma. And they replace ether with this electrified gas or vapor, so that the molecules are dynamic, have an electrical energy to them, and that's plasma. So see, those are the structures of matter and the states of matter. That's where Edgar Cayce sees them, rather than beings like fairies, brownies, gnomes, and so on.
How did you first become interested in this topic, and what made you write about it?
Well, when I first started working here some 50 years ago, there was an apparition that occurred here on the campus, and I was working here and heard about it and got involved with it. And basically what happened is there was a huge camellia bush out back of the original building, and the prayer healing group leader, Ruth Lenore, a very spiritual lady, meditating every day, very much a healer and all, she was coming by the bush one day when she noticed that on all the leaves were these little brownies in their red and green outfits with their curly-toed shoes and their little hats, and their hands were on their hips. And they said, if you get a camera, we'll let you take a picture of us. And so she went to get the camera. Now, Hugh Lynn Cayce, Edgar Cayce's oldest son, his office had a window that looked right out on the camellia bush, and he saw them. So he came out, Ruth came back, and then the rumor spread to the rest of the staff that this was happening, and David Abrig was the professional photographer, so he grabbed a camera and came running over to take a picture, and he couldn't see them. And he said to Ruth and Hugh Lynn, he said, you really are seeing stuff in these this bush, on these leaves. And they said, yes, and you can't see them? And said, no, I don't see anything. I do see the leaves moving a little bit, but I don't see anything to photograph. And he had a Polaroid camera, so he took a picture, and there were the brownies on the leaves in the photograph. So he knew they were there, and he asked, why can't I see them and you can see them? And they explained to him, it's more a consciousness than it is. You have the same cones and rods in your eyes as I do in mine, and David had the same ones as they, but their consciousness was such that they could see through the veil and see things that were really not fully materialized, and yet were there. And so that really got me interested. And then I learned that Edgar Cayce as a child saw all these little people most of the time of his youth, and had experiences with them and communicated with them. So that got me into it, and I started researching it and gathering little stories, and then I had a few experiences, and that helped enhance my interest, and eventually I wrote the book.
Is that camellia bush still out there? Because I want to go look at it.
No, it isn't. It was gone many years ago when a a shift occurred in the layout of the campus,
Okay.
and the camellia bush is no longer there. And I don't think the people that moved it were aware that it was a brownie haven. These
Right.
brownies now, we're talking about little people, not the Girl Scouts and not the delicious
Right.
cakes. These were little brownies in their little outfits.
Have you ever had an experience with angels or fairies?
Yes, and that added to my interest in this topic. It's not that I was trying to write a book, I was just gathering information to understand this better. And I guess one of the most profound experiences I had with an angel, as the scriptures say, unawares, was in the Badlands of South Dakota about 2 in the morning. I was driving to Nebraska from North Dakota, where I had been there for a meeting, and it was pitch dark in the middle of nowhere, and there was a hitchhiker. Now, normally I would never pull over, but there was some compelling energy that caused me to pull over and pick this person up. He got into the car, and I said I was going up a little ways and turned south on this route in toward Nebraska. And he said, "Don't do that. That's the Indian reservation, Wounded Knee. You shouldn't do that. They wouldn't want a stranger driving through their reservation, especially at this hour." And I said, "Okay." He said, "Go up to the next route and turn south." So I went up there, and I turned, I stopped the car to let him out, and I looked back to see if there was any traffic. Of course, there was no cars on the road.
Right.
And then I turned to make sure he was clear of the car, and I couldn't see him. So I got out of the car and looked around. Now, this is the Great Plains. I can see to the horizon.
Yeah.
He is gone. He disappeared. And the hair on the back of my neck stands up, and my forearms, my hair was just, I was startled, electrified, and a little bewildered. I got back into the car, and I thought for a minute that, is it possible there are forces watching out for me that I'm not aware of that kept me from making the wrong turn?
Right.
And so I drove all the way to Nebraska like this. And, and then when I looked up Wounded Knee to understand why or what was going on, I saw where they had just shot 2 FBI agents.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought, oh my gosh, it's a good thing I didn't make that turn. And where did this guardian being come from and disappear to? It was like just before the turn and
Yeah.
just after.
That's incredible.
That really affected me a great deal. And then I had a little fairy in my garden for a few summers, and that also enhanced my sense of fairies.
Now, speaking of fairies, you have a chapter that includes J.R.R. Tolkien's or Tolkien's, his information about fairies.
Right.
So what made you include that?
Amazingly, I call him Tolkien. He wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and he really immersed himself into the legend and the lore of these non-physical beings, usually non-physical. Cayce said they rarely manifest themselves into the physical world, but they're very close, just beyond the veil. But they can push in and make themselves evident to us. Well, he studied all of this thoroughly, and he and C.S. Lewis were members of this writers' researchers club called the Inklings.
Oh, clever.
And C.S. Lewis also wrote about these sort of imaginative beings from another dimension that sometimes we open the door to, as in the wardrobe of C.S. Lewis's books. And so I wanted to study him because he actually did a series of essays at the university in England on this topic. And so I looked at them and excerpted some of his detail about them because I thought it helped us get a perspective from someone who had really researched it and then had 2 very famous movies.
It was really interesting to read that. So the subtitle of the book is With a Perspective from the Edgar Cayce Readings on the Supernatural. What is Cayce's perspective on the supernatural?
Again, from Cayce's perspective, this would be the natural, us sitting here in natural, three-dimensional, solid form, using vocal cords and vibrating eardrums rather than telepathy or seeing with our mind's eye. The supernatural is the aura around these flowers. We don't normally see that with the corn, in your aura and mine. And then once you start into that area, there's a realm of the little people, of these other beings, and they are individualized according to Cayce. They all have an individual little persona about them, personality, but they belong to different communities of the invisibles. And that's the supernatural realm. And Edgar taught over and over that that realm is more influential than the physical realm. And he said if you could tap into the unseen forces, they are far greater than the seen, and they could help you. And so the most strangest reading he ever gave was an oil man asked, how can I find oil? He was going to go get some geologists. And Edgar said to him, you'd do better to get the brownies that have been trying to talk with you to tell you about this land you're on.
Oh, wow.
So for him, the supernatural beings knew the land, knew where the oil was, and if he would just pay attention intuitively, he would get the guidance.
Well, the book is wonderful, and I love all the information you offer about the unseen world. So, and thank you for talking to me about it today.
You're very welcome.
Angels, Fairies, Demons, and the Elementals is published by A.R.E. Press and available at arecatalog.com.